Hi everyone. Welcome back to another CDH Lunch and Learn. I'm Darren, the Community and Partnerships Coordinator here at Cremorne Digital Hub. If it's your first time joining us, the Lunch and Learn is a series where we feature guests to teach founders the really valuable skills that they need to scale. Today we're doing a little bit of a different topic. Typically we do a lot of topics based around the early stages of being a founder. How do you build product? How do you sell your first customer? How do you, handle your raise? But today we're doing one that's a little bit different about sort of the end of that proverbial journey of ultimately selling your company. So we're really, really glad to be joined by Jess Christiansen-Franks today, the Managing Director of Wade Institute, to speak to us a little bit about the experience of building a company and then ultimately selling it to REA, I believe probably last year.
November, yes.
Yeah, November, but finalising towards this year actually. And some of the sort of details around what an exit actually entails, and just a little bit more on that story so you can learn and have that ultimate vision to work towards. But just please tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Oh my gosh. Well, I am originally a landscape architect, which means I have zero qualifications to even start a tech business, let alone to grow it and ultimately sell it. But I had
Very
a career.
inspiring, yes.
Well, is it? I have a great garden.
Yeah.
Right? But I worked in property development for 15 years and just got really frustrated with how hard it was to measure the success of our projects. And so I very naively thought I could build a tech for that, and so pitched some ideas and won some seed funding and ended up starting Neighbourlytics that way. And so on that journey for like nearly 10 years in the end, and then now having exited and now getting to spend a lot more time in my garden and now teaching at the Wade Institute.
Yeah. So cool. So just a little bit about on the idea of selling your company. Is it the fairy tale ending of riding off into the sunset that everyone sort of makes it out to be?
Yeah, you're going to ask me how many boats I bought?
Yeah. How many yachts do you have now? Supercars?
Well, I have twice as many as I had before. So
okay, good. Yeah.
No, I mean, it's interesting because as a founder, obviously the goal is to exit the business at some point so that the investors and the staff as well can get a financial return on the work that they've put in.
Yeah.
But usually that's not what you're thinking about at the beginning. I didn't create the business so that I could create personal wealth. Frankly, if I had wanted more personal wealth, I would have stayed in property development directly for longer.
100%.
But I wanted to solve an interesting problem. And so for me, getting to the end, and I'll touch on this in the talk, but getting to sell my business was a chance to allow that really, really awesome IP that we built go into the world and have an even bigger reach than we were able to do with it just as a solo business.
Yeah, so true. I think there's always this varying narrative of why people choose to be founders, right?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes the answer always is sometimes people glorify this he went 100x overnight and now he's super rich. And it's just but if you wanted something that's consistent, right, you would probably just work in a high paying role and do that for a few years. And you could probably live a pretty good life doing that rather than losing your mind with sleepless nights.
And hopefully getting 100x
and just
at
gambling.
The end. Exactly.
If ever. But thank you very much for joining us today, guys. If you are in the chat, calling in from anywhere in the world, feel free to drop where you are in the chat. But for any questions that you may or may not have during the presentation, please just drop them into the chat and we'll endeavour to answer them after the main discussion, okay? Now just kicking off to some of the slides. Okay, we're good. Oh my God. That scared me for a second there. Great.
All right.
Okay.
I'm up.
Take the wheel, take the wheel.
All right, thank you. So what I want to do to frame up how you get to an exit is do a very, very quick overview of what the business was, what Neighbourlytics was. And I'm going to try. I haven't actually pitched Neighbourlytics in probably at least 18 months. So I'm not as polished as everyone watching who are real founders who are still pitching all the time. The time would be. But essentially what we created with Neighbourlytics was the ability to measure what was happening in local neighbourhoods. And like I said, I came from the property space and we could see that there was a real gap in the data available to understand the success success of local projects. And there's a lot of money thrown at that problem in the sector, and we could see that there was a tech solution for that. So we positioned ourselves as this community lifestyle data set, and we were replacing consulting. Right. So I had been one of those consultants. I'd been earning sort of six-figure project incomes to advise, to do manual research and advise landowners and governments and property developers on what they would want to do. And we could really see that there was a opportunity to solve that and make it better. And the pain point that our market was feeling is that the property developer or the government promise a vision, but the actual lived experience of the neighbourhood is different to the vision. And so how do we quantify what that is?
Yeah.
And so the gap in the data is that there just wasn't a way to measure experience in a reliable way. You would ask people what they think, and then you would measure how big the open space was, but you couldn't actually quantify the experience.
Yeah.
And so we started like 10 years ago, back before big data was cool. Remember that thing? You're probably too young to remember when big data became cool, but that before AI, that's what anyone was talking about was big data. And it was, we realized that because of how digital people's lives kind of pretty suddenly were, you could tap into essentially real-time data feeds from Instagram, Facebook, Google reviews, TripAdvisor to see how people are using local neighbourhoods. So we harness that data to create this real-time feed of how people live and what they value in local neighbourhoods, to see sort of who is there, where do they spend time, what do they love to do, what are they talking about, and what exists in the neighbourhood. And we were doing it really for 8 years proper, and it was 2017. We won a pitch competition, won some seed funding to start, and started validating the analytics and proving that you could turn an Instagram feed or a Facebook events feed into data about local neighbourhoods. We won pre-seed funding. We got some really great flagship clients off the bat, and it was just me and my co-founder and a head of analytics. And then a couple of years later, we did another capital raise. We won a lot of awards. We were category creators, right? So we're one of the first prop tech businesses that was called that.
Yeah.
And so we got quite a lot of national attention and got a lot of flagship customers, including around the world, in our next couple of years. We did a couple more capital raises, but we were revenue generating right off the bat. So we were able to be really lean with the capital that we brought in, but we built out more complex analytics. Everything that we built was able to be done globally. The only country in the world our data didn't work was China, but we could even do it in, say, rural Myanmar. There were digital footprints. And interestingly, in emerging economies, there's much more digital footprint because often businesses don't have websites, but they have Facebook pages, right? So if you want to get a list of all the businesses in Samoa, go on Facebook, right? And so that's the data sets that we were using. So really, really rich, globally ubiquitous data.
Interesting.
And so we validated our product. We had very, very complex analytics and unique data feeds that we were using to create our data sets, and we were sort of scale up ready. And then we had a big pivot because, of course, you haven't had a scaled business unless you've done, there were lots of tiny pivots along the way, but an enormous pivot at that point. And I'll talk about that in a moment. But we essentially, even though we already had, what's that, 5 or 6 years of customers and brands using us and evidence of our platform working, we completely ditched all of our global product and just returned to an Australian market and rebuilt the product from the bottom up, really. And we cut our sales function, we cut our sales team, we allowed no more customization from our customers, and we turned our average purchase from $100,000 into $2,000 intentionally. That was the strategy. And then we became successful.
Whoa.
Yeah. So, there's I've collapsed a lot of complexity into that short diagram. And then we were able to sell the business to REA Group, which is easily the single best exit we could have had. If we think of where this IP needed to live in the world, I get chills talking about it. That is absolutely hands down the place that it needed to go to be able to live on in the world if we weren't able to scale it ourselves. And so the things that led to the pivot, and this is critical because this is actually what made us acquirable in the end, is we were always running the business thinking about how to reach the most people that we possibly can.
Yeah.
Is that in 2022, before we pivoted, we were getting 400% year-on-year growth from a revenue perspective. We had really, really awesome customers, the customers engaging with us around the world. We'd had, nearly $6 million of capital raised, and we were a big brand. We were winning a lot of awards, on TV shows. We were sort of the darlings of the startup space for quite a period there. And so we were growing fast. We had an amazing team, beautiful office, and lots of evangelizing customers. But these were vanity metrics, right? And so actually, when we dug into it, less than 20% of our revenue was coming from repeatable sales. We were doing a lot of consulting, a lot of $100,000 demonstration projects, and the same customer might stay with us, but they weren't buying for the same project again. It wasn't actually a subscription in the way we wanted it to be a subscription.
Yeah.
We had 0 renewals of a single project. So someone would,
interesting,
right?
Yeah.
And we weren't even checking, right? Because we had so much revenue coming in. And for example, Stockland might continue to be a customer, but they never renewed for the same project. And so, but we weren't even looking at that, right? And at one point in time when we realized that we needed to pivot, I for the first time, it's so embarrassing, for the first time in the history of the company, I looked at how often people were logging in and we'd had 50 user logins in 3 months.
Whoa.
And we'd earned, I think, $600,000 in that time. We were meant to have about 1,000 active users, and there were theoretically, 1,000 people meant to be using it. But when we dug into it, we realized that most people were just coming to the onboarding session that was live recorded, where I walked them through the data, and then they took the PDF printout and just used that. And we had built, it made me feel sick the day I realized that. We had built this beautiful software interface, but because we were trying to disrupt consulting, we had to make the product feel a bit like a consulting product because that's what they were used to buying. And we got good revenue from that, good growth, but ultimately that kind of product where they're just getting a PDF and then getting on with it isn't a subscription. It's not sticky, and it's not going to lead to the sustainable scaling that we actually needed to do. And so we realized all of this, and we're like, we need to, the goal now is to raise capital again and tip money into scale, but we absolutely should not be scaling this business because it won't scale. It will be a road to nowhere. And we could have raised money on that business because the rest of the vanity metrics looked amazing, but we couldn't scale that business. And so,
like at one point, does it just become like a consulting business, right?
Exactly. And like a really nice margin consulting business, right?
Businesses live great.
Exactly.
They live great. Yeah.
Exactly. And so, and we had just got so, this is perhaps a bit unkind to myself, but I do slap myself on the wrist when I think about it now, is that we'd got so distracted by our own sense of being the experts that we never listened to our customers. I was in Qantas magazine, that was like the highlight of my life. My grandma was so proud when I was in Qantas magazine. But keynoting all the conferences. And so this is the thing I think a lot of businesses struggle with, is that we were category creators. We were invited to write articles, keynote conferences, and talk about this type of data, which is what you have to do when you're creating a market that didn't exist before. But you can't do that and then not then listen to what your customers' pain points are. Our customers will come to us and say, you tell us what we need to do, you tell us what the product needs. And we didn't ask them what was their pain point, which is why we weren't getting the renewals. And so we weren't solving their real problem. We weren't making a weekly habit. We weren't going mainstream. And we ultimately weren't scalable. And so, we could have raised on that, but it wasn't a scalable business. And so ironically, we were just the data company that didn't measure anything. We measured stuff for our customers, but we didn't even know how many people were logging in, right? Like, what? Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm admitting that, right? And so we were then hit by the post-COVID cost of living crisis, which of course we're still in, but the property sector got madly affected by that. And so within 3 days, we lost $1.2 million of committed revenue. So this is what forced us to pivot. We immediately had to eliminate 12 product lines. Because why did we have 12 product lines? Firstly, I asked you, what a ridiculous thing to have. Why do we have? Well, because the customers, we were the experts. We just added lots of products and people were paying for them. And so we had this shock in February 2023.
It's so funny that even at that even operating at that scale, you still fall victim to these things that we've been discussing in like early product things,
I
which
know.
is like stop adding more features and more product lines. Just
I
focus
should have
on,
come
like...
to your sessions. But it's true. It's true. But I think the reason we did it, and although we heard all of that and we were focused at the beginning, we still were thinking like, yeah, but now that we've got, insert big logo, Stockland, Mirvac, Scotland government of Qatar, they're our major clients. Now that we've got them, they'll add another zero to the budget. If we do this extra thing, yeah, we can do that extra thing. Let's add the extra thing. Oh, other people will buy that. And so we just kept appending our offer. And it made it really complicated and really expensive, but it wasn't scalable. I also had to make 34 redundancies. Yeah, that hurt. And we had to immediately start measuring everything, right? And so this is just a screenshot from what we called Harold. Harold was we named everything after famous neighbours. So Harold Bishop was the name of our data analytics system. And what we ended up doing was every different possible thing in our platform that would indicate someone was getting value from it. We measured it every week and looked at the counts of how much that was changing week on week. And every staff member looked at that. I mean, we didn't have many left at that point, but to check, like, is it working? Where are people going? Are they activating? Not only are they logging in, but are they having a deep, broad session when they get there? Are they returning, and all of those things? And so we rebuilt the platform into just something totally self-service, nationwide data available now. And it's beautiful, right? Like it's so beautiful. And no PDF reports, free accounts, come in and instantly click and generate a report for anywhere in Australia. So we were able to build out that interface because we'd done the 5 years of knowing what people wanted. Like this interface came from the 12 product lines, but rather than making it 12 products with lots of different choice, it's just log in and you have what you have and then pay to upgrade and get more. And so within 6 months, the whole system was fully automated end to end. It took less than 20 hours a month to run the whole business.
Wow.
All engineering, all everything, the whole of Australia data processed every month, 20 hours. That's all it took. 96% of users were renewing. Remember, we'd had 0 before that. We were getting a 1 to 6 network effect. So of every one user, within 6 months, they were referring 6 other users on average into the platform. And we're getting more than 100 user logins every day of people actively coming in and using it sort of in just 6 months. And so we sort of pulled off, like fluked this sort of turning it into an actual SaaS business, thank God, because now we know SaaS is dead. But back then, this was before SaaS is dead. And so, but then the problem that we were having is now we realize it was a disruption coming from generative AI, right? And so the property sector slowed down on buying data products. They were wanting to buy agents. And so we started seeing the property data space slow down, even though we had really good free users and we just weren't getting the interest in at the kind of big logo level. The market was showing us that interest wasn't there, but we had lots of partnerships with other data providers and that interest was going up. So it became very clear to us that we were becoming vastly acquirable at the time, that selling direct to customers wasn't going to work. And so because all the bigger data companies were wanting to have proprietary data and we had incredible proprietary data. And so we decided November 2024, it costs a lot of money to exit. You've got to get teams in place and my attention, like raising capital, my attention has to be off the business and on and we thought we've got a sweet spot here to exit. We've built this badass business, eating out that the evidence is the metrics. And now we believe now is the moment to sell it, but let's test. No one knew what Gen AI was going to do yet. Well, maybe some people did, but I didn't. And so we're like, let's put it to market, see what happens. Give it 3 months. First mistake, don't give it 3 months. That's one of the rules. And we wanted it to be a technical acquisition. So we wanted to demonstrate there's no key person risk here. We've built a badass IP, technical IP that doesn't exist. It's globally ubiquitous except for mainland China, and it doesn't exist anywhere else. This should be acquired by one of the big tech players.
How does one go about advertising to sell your company?
So the process is that we went, I think I've stepped out. So we sent 25 invitations out to the companies that we believe should want to buy it. But it was a spectrum. It wasn't just the REAs of the world. It was like big property owners and all the people that had worked with us across the years that had used our data across their systems. And from 25 invitations, 22 of them signed confidentiality to get that information memorandum. So we were only expecting a handful to do it, but most of them were interested in learning more. And then 12 moved into a negotiation stage where we asked them to provide us with a non-binding indicative offer by a particular date to sort of show us the shape and how they wanted to acquire us and what it would look like. We received 3 actual offers. And then we moved into due diligence with just one, who you now know is REA. It's all announced. And then the DD was completed within 6 weeks. So that's the funnel, right, of how it worked. I'm flabbergasted at the conversion from invitations to negotiation. It was too much. It's too much work to negotiate with 12 businesses at once. And because they were vastly different kinds of businesses, they were all wanting to acquire us for different reasons. And so I'll talk about this in a minute, but this is the challenge with an acquisition, is that any other type of pitching that you're doing, like if you're pitching to an investor, or if you're a founder and you pitch to an investor or you pitch to a customer, you already know the value proposition you're putting to them.
Yeah.
But with the acquirer, they often don't even tell you the value. Like that is, it's not transparent. And so you've sort of got to guess, and then also know that a company like, obviously I can name REA because they bought us, but if I know it's them, they're going to be acquiring us for a particular reason, which I can assume, but they're not going to tell me. And that's going to be totally different than if I was perhaps getting acquired by, someone that owns shopping centres. It's going to be a totally different reason. So all my material, all my pitching is going to be different.
Yeah.
Now this process.
So did you customize all 12 of those negotiations?
Exactly. And so this process that was meant to take a month actually ended up taking a year. And so when we got 4 months in, we thought about taking the business off the market because I'm like, I can't stay in this exit for longer because it's going to take too long. Then we stayed to it because we still had like 20 to 12 people in the mix. Then it gets to June and I'm worried about how long it's all taking. And then we end up wildly having the highest ever revenue month we've ever had in the history of the company. I still don't know why.
Yeah.
And we then had 1.5 years of runway, even with me not earning any more money in the company. And then the valuation spiked. And so because we were negotiating with different businesses, the valuation went up, right? And AI had got further so the data businesses looking at us wanted to wanted us more. It was more imperative that they bought more proprietary data. Yeah. And so then we were able to get to where we got to. So, I've had my own experience exiting, but now that I'm the managing director at Wade Institute, I work with lots of founders who have exited or are planning to exit. And so this is not the first time I've had this conversation. And so I've tried to distill the things that happen in an exit into, there's lots of lessons, but let's just call it 3 because it sounds like a nice list.
Yep.
Into like, what are the 3 things to know, because you can kill an M&A deal if you don't know these things. And so some of this is from my experience, but also just from the sort of dozens of other people that I've spoken to. And so the first one, when you're selling the business, is that you need to be really hyper-focused on what is your unique value proposition. Now, obviously, this is something that startups know already, but your value proposition, but this is it. Your acquisition value proposition isn't the same as your customer one, right? And so what your customer market, like what your market value proposition is relevant to an acquirer, maybe, but, I don't know the answer to this question, but we can all guess. How much do we think, an organization like REA cares about exactly how I position my product into the market? Their market brand and positioning and messaging is much bigger and is going to supersede my angle. Yeah. And so although they want to know my position, that's not the most compelling thing for them, right? And so when you think about your value proposition, you've got to be thinking about why are they buying you? Are they buying you because they want your revenue, in which case it might be a private equity type acquisition? Are they buying you because they want your skills, your staff skills, acqui-hire, which is maybe a competitor might want to buy you? Or are they buying you because you give them a strategic capability that they otherwise don't have? And so when we looked across our business, we had revenue, we had great staff, but our main differentiator was the strategic thing that we'd built. And that's why we went to partners, because that's where we knew we would get the best the best angle and the best valuation, right?
Yeah.
Because the people that already understood the strategic advantage we gave their business. And so anybody can do this thinking at any point in their business. This is not something you should wait about, right? And so me and my CTO were thinking about this years ahead of the exit. Before it was even palatable to talk about an exit, we're always thinking, what is the main differentiator of this business? It was likely with a really interesting, unique property data set that we had, that acquisition would be in our future at some point in time. It would be unlikely that we would end up IPOing that business. It would be more likely that we get as big and meaningful as we can, and then we get folded into another big data platform. And so how do we make sure that our unique differentiator is as powerful and compelling and well understood as possible? And that meant that our CTO, my CTO Gregor, was paying off our tech debt right at the beginning. We had by the time we rebuilt, at every step of the way, he was making sure that the actual technical system was end to end the highest quality thing that it could be, because that would be what would get us there in the end.
Yeah.
And so, for us, it was Neighbourlytics. It was about us having the most efficient data transformation system that we could have. And so, like I said, our acquirers weren't that interested in our branding or what awards we'd won and what our knowledge base was like on our website. It was much more about, look at this badass piece of tech that we've built that you can build. And so the financials I provided, the things that were much more important than how much revenue am I earning, although I might have been stoked with my June results were nothing compared to REA's June results, right? And so they don't care about my revenue, but they care about my unit economics. They care about how many dollars did I have to spend to earn that. So that ratio, was the most important thing.
It's like sort of like what's valuable, what's useful to them, right?
Exactly.
So they can sort of take the lesson of why exactly, like how exactly you're doing that, and implement it into how they're operating.
Exactly, right? Because what they're looking for is, if they can bring, and they don't tell me this, it's my assumption, if they can bring thousands more users to this thing, how much will it cost them to service that product? And if I can say, we had numbers like, if our data system can take 100,000 users a day without there being a lift in the technical infrastructure behind it, right? And then if you do have more than 100,000 a day, then you have to build out a different cloud processing system. And so they wanted to know, though, we suppose that anybody buying us for technical reasons would want to know what those thresholds were, so they really could see how efficient that it was. They didn't really care who our market was, other than the fact that it proved that people believed our analytics, that property developers trust this data because we'd created analytics. The integrity of our tech was something we put front and center in what we talked about, so that they knew it would be easy to use it. They wouldn't have to rebuild it. It wasn't crap, that sort of thing. And like I said, we didn't lean on our growth potential or our revenue or our brand, because an acquirer like the ones we were targeting, that's not what they're going to buy us for. And this feels really uncomfortable, right? Because when you are raising capital or doing any other type of pitching, you want to talk about growth potential. Like, by the time you're at exit stage, potential is off the table. Like, this is the potential moment right now. The future and the thing, that's not as important to them as all of the other things that will make that happen. The second one, which I see people making this mistake all the time, and it is the first question that anybody asks me when they're thinking about an exit, is like, who did you use? Did you use a broker? How did you get the support that you need? And my piece of advice is, you absolutely, as the founder, the leaders of the company, need to trust your gut and be right in the center of the process and not defer to the experts. And so experts is like this. It's a bit cynical on purpose, right? The experts. And I mean it, right? Yeah. Because advice, there is, I feel like it's the same. I feel like when I had a baby, everyone gives you advice. I feel like weight loss is the other thing. Everyone's got an opinion. Exiting is another thing where everyone's got advice. Everyone's got advice and no one's got substance. So it's one of those realms. So
everyone's a fitness expert. Right. Everyone's going to tell you, like, right. You see carbs. Your macros are not like right. That's why you're not losing weight. Okay.
It's the same with exiting, right? Everyone's got an opinion. All your shareholders, all your board, right? And everyone has some context to share. Great. but no deal is ever the same. And it's really, really important to remember, even more so than raising capital, no exit is ever the same. And so just because something was a golden rule on a different exit doesn't mean it applies to you, right? And it's really important to hold that in mind.
Especially as like the rules of how we're operating and doing business are being rewritten in real time.
Yeah.
And it's like things are getting faster than ever.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
you know, like
and let's be honest, like as founders, you are at the front, you're a pioneer already, right? Because you're creating something that's never existed before. You're creating a market niche, you're building a team that's never existed before. And so founders are used to being the pioneers and being brave in that pioneering. But there are some parts of being a founder that founders feel inclined to outsource to someone else. Well, my annual financials, I shouldn't pioneer that. I should probably use a CFO who knows what they're doing, who's not just sort of trying to bring a new angle to it, you know, or hiring, like HR things. You know, that's something that there is some space for creativity, but often it's something there's just rules and you need to follow them. But exiting feels like one of those things that the adults know how to do. Let's just get some adults to help me. Sure. But also those adults don't know your business as well as you do. And so just don't think of it as the same thing as your annual financials where you hand it to the adults and let them do it.
Yeah.
You need to really trust your own gut. So that being said, you absolutely must use a broker. Use an M&A, they call them M&A advisors, but you think of them like I mean, maybe this is unkind, but like a real estate agent. You wouldn't sell your house without a real estate agent, but partly because it's helpful for there to be, they're not really independent, but there to be a third party who you talk through.
Yes.
You know, and so that is really, really helpful. And I had lots of other advisors, but every conversation someone had with me, there was so much hyperbole, right? Really? Always do this, never do that. You must do that. It's essential. You know, I was getting so much. It wasn't advice. It was like instruction from the people around us that we absolutely must under no circumstances, blah, blah, blah. And pretty much every single one of those truths were wrong, right? And maybe in many other exits, that's the case. Sure. But it is so unique, any individual business. And so, you know, this gets down to the sort of really specific end, but it's a really great example is that when you get to the contracts are obviously a big part of the exit where you go like, what are the terms? What are the actual, it's not just a dollar value, right? It's also, are you buying the company or are you buying the assets, right? And what are the terms? Are you paying it in cash or are you paying it in shares? Or are you paying it all at once or paying it out over time? And if you're paying it out over time, why are you paying? How are you paying it? How are you deciding how it gets paid out? And what conditions are you putting on the founder to stay or the staff to stay? Because often there's an element of that. And if something proves to be misleading in the acquisition process later, how long are you on the hook for and for how much money? You know, what are you warranting about this? And so there's a lot of complexity in the deals, in the terms. And when we started getting the contracts, they're, you know, 30 pages of stuff I don't understand. And it was tempting to not try to understand it and to go, well, the lawyers are looking at it and the broker's looking at it and the rest of the board are looking at it. And, you know, normally as a board, we all just sort of have consensus on the contracts we're signing anyway. Yeah. So let me just do that this time. But I found that there were a number of times with the various stages of negotiation with all different parties that they'd put a term in and the advisor would say, oh, well, they'll never move on that term. If they ask for that, they'll never move on it. Yeah. Bullshit. Right? Like, and there were a few points with different parties where I was told you absolutely can't negotiate back on that. You can't push back. And then when we did push back, but we pushed back as good humans and saying, this is why that doesn't feel right. They then said, oh, yeah, fair play. You know, I thought, what? Really? Right? Yeah, so like, why would that happen? But so there was, you know, there's a whole bunch of stuff and certainly I'm happy to, I'll skim over this now, but I'm really happy if anyone's got questions about actual terms, but, you know, how they retain, ask for staff to be retained, what you warranty as well, what assets are included or not included. You know, our business had been around for 10 years. We had all these product lines that didn't exist anymore. Are they acquiring those? And I don't mean if they're not acquiring them, do I get to keep them? Because obviously I don't want to use them. But if they're acquiring them, I need to figure out how to hand them over and teach them about them. You know what I mean? Like, are you just buying the products that are currently in the market,
Mm.
or are you buying every product we've ever had before? Because if you are, I have to figure out how to find all the information and then hand it to you and teach you about it, you know. And so the big thing I've really, really learned is like, don't defer to the experts and come to the table as a human, right? And even though it's scary, and even though, you know, with the types of people, you know, lawyers around the table and, you know, an acquirer, you know, REA were the most incredible group of humans to deal with. Honestly, hand on heart, it would be so easy to assume that through no fault of theirs, big company, lots of experienced staff, that they might be trying to, you know, just be more corporate and hard for me to.
Sharky.
No, not even a hint of it.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And so many people had said to me, don't trust the big companies, just assume they're trying to. And yeah, sure, be like thoughtful, but if you just negotiate in good faith, I found that it worked extremely well. Right?
Yeah, it's an important lesson.
And then the third and final point is that there is just a new board dynamic, right? And I worked with the most incredible shareholders and board members, right? So this isn't like, well, people flipped and became, you know, it's not that. But think about it like this, right? Most of the time you're working with your board, and this can include senior leadership, like my CTO was included in this, and, you know, major shareholders who'd been with us the whole way. Most of the time you're working with these people, you are in a phase of the business where everybody is coming together to grow this thing into the biggest moonshot it can be. And they're evangelizing and high-fiving and look at what we can do, look at all the potential, blah, blah, blah. And that is a particular dynamic where it is essential that everybody feels like they're rowing in the same direction and that they are, you know, all on board with the vision. And yeah, there'll be some challenging questions and some critical discussion, but mostly it's about, yeah, we're all in this together. And when you get to the sale end of the company, quite specifically, everybody's outcome, and I don't even just mean financially, but the objective is going to be different because we're no longer going to be working on it together.
Yeah.
And so me as the founder and board member and major shareholder, that's three totally different hats, right? As a major shareholder, I want as much money out of this thing in my pocket tomorrow as I possibly can, with no earnouts and, you know, right, no, you know, hooks, just give us cash. You know, I want that. And I'm aligned with my other shareholders on that. But every shareholder has a slightly different way their shares pay out and all of that. So it's all a bit different between each of them. But I also wear the hat as a director. So I'm a legal director of the company, which means I have to represent, I have to sign the contracts, I have to make sure we're warranting, I have to make sure we're not breaching our insurance. There's a whole lot of the governance that's required, which is different again. Obviously, I can't just be the cavalier shareholder. I have to operate as a company director in all the ways that it is that. And then the other hat that I wear that the other board members don't is that I am the founder who believes this IP should live on in the world. And I care deeply about where it goes. Yeah. And those things are at tension. Now, again, luckily with us, they all lined up and it was great. Yeah. But there were moments in it where I realized that, you know, when we're looking at all the different acquirers, I'm reading the list of acquirers and I was mentally preferencing them based on being a founder, because at that stage, we don't know who's going to pay what money. So everything else is equal, assumed. And I'm thinking, well, obviously I would want someone like REA ahead of someone else who doesn't have the reach that REA has, because I want to optimize for my IP going in as many places as possible. And it became obvious to me that the other shareholders weren't interested in that and of course they're not. And I don't mean that cynically. No. And so it just starts to feel very different. And so we, you know, to move into an acquisition phase, it feels uncomfortable for the board who used to all be on the same page to come to the room with slightly different objectives. Yeah. And so we had spent 2 years rebuilding our tech. The board knew all about that. They knew why we were doing it, obviously. And so they were all on board with why we were doing it. But this difference of like, what is the unique value proposition for acquirers? Even still, we hadn't had enough conversation about that because it sort of snuck up on us. Yeah. When we realized acquirers didn't really care about revenue, you know, we sort of had to come back to that at a board level, go, well, we should keep pushing revenue. But it was hard to, what should we? Why should we? Is that really the most important? So the board wasn't ready for its own change in direction. And, you know, through the acquisition process, we were meeting twice a week for a year to get this done, to make sure that we were on the same page. And
It's a crazy frequency for a board meeting.
right. And one of our investors is overseas, right?
Yeah,
So
insane.
US investor, so
Insane.
hard time zone
Yeah,
balance,
yeah,
a lot of, and so, you know, your role as a founder is suddenly different, and especially because
Well, it
in
becomes
most
like pseudo your full-time job. Like your main role is handling the whole process.
exactly, and then also as a founder, the acquirer wants me as an employee as well. And so that is a different hat, and that's not really a hat that sits at the board table. You know, like
Right.
I have to be a company director and I have to be in the best interest of my shareholders first. And then I have this different agenda where they're offering me a job and I've got to decide if I want it. And what if I don't want it? You know, and I did take it. So, you know, spoiler, I did work at REA for just over 6 months part-time. But, you know, the whole deal, you know, in a different scenario, a whole deal could fall over if the founder doesn't want the job, you know. And so it's a really, you know, really complex. And so from all the different people that I've spoken to, the kinds of things you have to talk about is like, what does everyone at the board table or everyone in that kind of advisory group, what do they need from a business perspective? What kind of exit are they needing? What kind of time spend do they want to have? You know, it's a very different kind of meeting to have. What do the staff and founders want out of this? You know, our CTO was involved in these discussions, but he's not a director, but he's in the meetings, but they're going to want him with the acquisition, different again, right? And so there's this sort of tension that happens through the exit. I don't mean like a disagreement tension. I just mean like balance between are we trying to earn more revenue while we're selling this company? Because you're going to hand that revenue over to the acquirer. If that's prepayments, you don't get to keep that, right? You've got to hand it to them. So are we trying to earn revenue or are we trying to just conserve as much cash as possible and kind of hibernate the business while we sell it? That's a difficult thing to figure out. And then also you've got to be telling your shareholders how it's going, because they all know or usually they have a level of understanding that you're in a phase. And so how do you explain to them where you're up to and what success looks like and how good it should be looking at this point? You know, we sort of troubleshooted these problems as they arose. But if I was to teach someone how to do it, I'd say like, you got to work this out as a board before you even move in. Yeah. And it is really, really helpful to use a third party to help you with some of the conversations if you need to. So that's it. That's one point, right? There's about 16 points on that slide.
Yeah.
Right? That's the 3 lessons for how to exit well.
Very valuable lessons. Very valuable lessons. Okay, I think we'll go to some questions from the audience.
Hopefully we've got some. You can give me hard questions if you want about the terms and other things.
I mean, I've got a few questions personally.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. So like, you mean you named your features after like characters from Neighbours, the TV show? Right?
Yeah. So it wasn't.
Who was Paul?
It wasn't the features. It was the back end systems.
Okay.
So that we could, in our mind, say where are we putting that. So Ned Flanders is what we called our public facing website. Betty Rubble was our back end system. So we did it from famous Neighbours. Kramer was another one. One of our reports. Who else did we have?
Right, I thought you meant like Neighbours, like the Australian TV show.
Yeah, we had some. I mean,
like
who else did we have? Toady. Toady was one of ours.
Toady.
Yeah, but we had a lot of the Friends. We had Seinfeld.
Yeah, cool.
Elaine was one of our.
Oh, great.
Wilma. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah.
Any just like famous Neighbours.
Yeah.
You know, like Ned Flanders, famous neighbour.
I love how my first question was just not a productive question at all.
That actually did make the acquisition quite funny because that is literally how it was named. And so when we're doing the DD notes with REA and even in the months since to do the handover, we're sort of explaining, oh no, that's Wilson and that's this. And they're like, oh, so which one's Wilson? And they still use the names as far as
that's so cool. That's good. That's like a great way for the IP to live on. The spirit of the company lives on in that way. Great. So we'll start answering some questions now. So CR asks, funding pathway seems different from traditional pre-seed, seed, Series A. Can you explain why bridge and pre-Series A was done instead?
So the reason is because we didn't need as much capital as what a Series A normally would be. And so we called them the bridge. I can't remember which one was which, but one of them we just got additional funds from our existing shareholders. So it wasn't an open round. But we really wanted to make sure that we didn't announce a full Series A until we were actually ready to raise that level of capital, because otherwise we might end up with a small Series A, which would be a bad market signal. So it was purely around the size of capital that we wanted to raise, and those bridge and pre-Series A were fairly small amounts, but while we were waiting for the market to settle down post-lockdown, because that really disrupted the property sector, we just wanted to do a couple more small raises exactly before we went out for a proper Series A.
Yeah, great. So Scott asks, are there standard gotchas in exiting T's and C's as there are in equity fundraising that founders should look out for or simply avoid at all costs?
Yeah, look, sample size of one for me. But you know what? Here's the thing. My uncle is a VC. And he was one of the early people involved in Blackbird, and he worked in the States for a long time.
Oh, super cool.
Yeah, right. So he knows his stuff.
Yeah.
And so I'd be on the phone to him. Hey, Bob, Uncle Bob,
lucky.
Uncle Bob. Hey, Bob, what about this? What about this? What do you think? And I asked, this is one of the questions I asked him, right? What are the standard things? And he said, he gave me 2 pieces of caution, which really turned out to be true, right? He said, the thing that gets you in the terms more than anything else, everyone tends to focus on the valuation. It's not the valuation, it's the warranties. And so he said, when you get an initial offer in writing, you've got like even just the term sheet or NBIO that we had, find out what they would expect the warranties to be. What are you warranting and who has to warrant? And it's tricky because at that stage, normally the warranties would be in the long form only, but the kinds of things that can be in warranties is that you might be selling a company for, X amount of dollars, I'd say $10 million, and the company is going to be handed over within a year, and they want you to warrant for 5 years to the amount of $50 million, right, of any future expense incurred by anything they deem to be misleading. And if that is it doesn't matter where you get to with the rest of the terms, right. If you can't agree to that level of warranting, the deal doesn't go ahead, right? And the trouble with the warranties is that they happen right at the end where everyone's like, hurry up. And also who signs the warranties? Because sometimes the acquirer will want all the shareholders to warrant. And what if the shareholders don't want to warrant? What if one of the co-founders doesn't want to warrant, or they want the CTO to do it? And so there's a lot of devil in that detail, I think. Yeah.
We have a next question from Rowan. Did REA rebrand your product or take it as a complete turnkey platform? Was Neighbourlytics patented at all?
I'll answer the second part first. We hadn't patented anything, and mostly just because of the time it would take and the cost. But they are. REA have an incredible data set. They've got lots and lots of different data, and they use that data across lots of different parts of their business. REA is a very complex business with lots of different parts to it. And so some of what they are doing is continuing to operate the platform as it was, but also it's really the data that sits behind it that adds a huge amount of value. And so they're using it in lots of different ways in the back end.
Yeah. What happens? So Sia asks, what happens to the employees post-exit? Did REA change staffing levels? Did their salaries and bonuses get redone?
Yeah.
Was that part of the actual terms?
Yeah, I actually wasn't clear on that when I said it. So when we did the pivot and we managed to flick the business into something that was self-service, we still had, I said we had to let go of about 30 people, but we still had a core staff, maybe of like 6, but it only took a day a month of my CTO's time and a day a month of my time to kind of operate the business. And so because key to our acquisition strategy was to demonstrate no key person risk, we stripped all the team out, right? And so even myself and my CTO just stopped working in the business full time. Even though there was stuff to do and trying to do prospecting and all of that, we needed to demonstrate that wasn't required to have the business operate. And the reason we lent so hard into that is because we had been such a big founder-led brand for so many years and won so many awards, we knew that the acquirer, whoever it was, would be worried that we were sort of a founder brand only. We didn't have proper tech. So by having no humans and very, very limited humans and really only tech, it allowed us to really demonstrate that. And so So there were no staff, and in fact, when we put it forward, we said you can buy it as a business, or you can buy it as an asset. And we have a historic staff team that we can show you that might be interested in a job if you wanted to offer them one. Same with me and the CTO. Basically, we were saying you don't need us. If you'd like us to come for a period of time, we're open to that, but you don't need us. And so that's what they did. They bought the assets, and then they negotiated with the CTO and I to work it on a contracted basis with them as part of the handover.
Yeah. There's just some other considerations that you have to think about, right? It's about the whole idea of your brand being really, really founder led. It's like, does it just break without a key figure person?
Exactly. And in a technical or strategic acquisition like that, most companies won't acquire.
They don't.
If that's
it's ultimately
the risk.
Not really scalable. Right?
Exactly. I mean, that's why I couldn't scale it. So why would REA want it? If that was the problem.
Boudica asks, did any of the advisors / investors introduce potential acquirers to you, or?
Maybe. Mostly, I think we got some particular contacts at different potential acquirers, but we really only we invited the companies that knew us anyway, because we were going for a strategic acquisition. We needed brands and we had been in the market so long, a lot of businesses knew us. And our data was actually layered into some of the companies that we already had technical integrations with some of these businesses, and so we didn't want to be starting from scratch with anyone that didn't know us, just because we believed that would take too long. And so we might have had a couple of introductions into like the right person in the team, but largely it was only the logos that we already had a relationship with. And so my invitation to them went along the lines of, hey, we've been working together for a long time. What?
No, it's just fascinating. It's just fascinating to hear, like, how do you structure an email to be like, hey, do you want to buy my company?
It's going to sound super casual.
Do you want to buy my, hey, just casually, like, do you want to buy my business? It's just like,
Hey, did you catch our new Netflix show?
I mean, like, do you want to think about it?
I know.
Hi, how was your weekend? Want to buy my business?
That's right. I should go back and find the emails and reread them and check what the tone sounds like. But it was like that because there were people I knew really well.
Sure.
And maybe I hadn't spoken to them in a couple of years, but I knew them, and it'd be like, hey, something like, we're moving into this new phase. We're going to put the business on a market, but because I have a really strong relationship with you, I want to invite you to join the process if you're interested. The brokers here, have a look at the confidentiality, and if you want to enter the process, then sign this, basically. And very, very short. And it was right before Christmas, which is also, they say never, never do doing it right before Christmas actually was perfect, because
really?
I think a couple of the people, one of them wrote back to me, was like, oh, I'm just about to get on my boat in the Greek islands for my holiday, but if you get me the I am now, I'll read it while I'm away. So a lot of these like big bosses were just reading it on their Christmas break. It was actually a good time to sell.
This is a great question. Without any capital raises, do you think you could have gotten Neighbourlytics off the ground? So Rowan's starting to draw off a bit of the mortgage now, and it's starting to get pretty scary.
Rowan, I mean, I think about this question a lot, especially because I now run the Wade Institute, and we work with a lot of different businesses thinking about capital flows, and we work with investors, and sort of, I often come back to this question of what is the right capital for each business. And what tends to happen in startup world is we sort of conflate venture capital with the best pathway. And so, and that VC backing is this ultimate signal that you have a great business.
Golden ticket.
It's a great signal that you've got a great VC backable business, but it's not a great signal that you have a great business, because there's lots of other types of businesses. So we could have bootstrapped only, and we had good revenue from the beginning, especially because I'd been a consultant. We could do the consulting overlay on what we did, and we got really good grants.
That's such a powerful tool.
It's true, but then it distracted us. Remember that slide, our own expertism? I was in Qantas magazine. What do I have to learn from customers, right? But we could earn revenue, but we chose to get investment because we wanted to grow faster, and we knew it was a land grab. We knew someone would be making this data at some point in time, and we had to get there first, and that we needed to build out our technical capability ahead of time. So without the lump sums of capital investment, we couldn't, investment from VCs and family offices, we couldn't have hired the experienced technical team that we needed to. And so we couldn't have built a business that was acquirable. But there was a different pathway that Neighbourlytics could have gone down, where we continue to be a really, really high quality service business with a badass differentiated service product that could have had great margins and didn't need VC capital and could have just grown that way. But we chose the investment pathway because of the direction we wanted the business to go in.
Yeah. Okay. We have a few a few more like loaded questions, but I think I'll save those for towards the end.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll wrap up these two questions in. So actually, firstly, what was Uncle Bob's second piece of advice? Who needs to? Was the second piece of advice?
Did I say there were two?
Yeah.
Oh,
first one
yeah.
was, you
Good.
did.
Yeah,
you
good
did.
pickup. Good pickup.
Good
See,
pickup, Ashley.
these are people are paying attention.
Good pickup, Ashley.
So the second piece of advice was, oh my gosh, I love this. Deals never fall over because the acquirer pulls out. They always fall over because the selling company can't agree.
Interesting.
And I'm like, no way. That's not the truth. You're being dramatic. But actually, I could see that being the case because even though, like I said, our shareholders were on the same page, our board are on the same page, really, really great group of people who are meeting twice a week for a year to come together and talk about this. And even in that situation, there were a couple of points where I'm like, oh my God, are we all going to agree on this? The acquirer has come to us with a term and we don't know what we think about which direction to go with this. So this might be something that we can't say yes to, and that's why the deal falls over.
So what actually happens in the room when everyone can't agree? Like what, just 12 angry men, or is that what goes on?
It's all repressed. I don't remember. No, I mean we got there, but like you're on a time crunch, right?
But does it have to be unanimous?
I think technically you just have to vote,
right?
But because the directors then need to put the position to that, we were always unanimous, right? I think. And we didn't even really vote other than the formality of doing it. But because we would then need to put something to the investors for them to agree, the investors will want to know what the directors thought. So it was really important to us that we'd really thought everything through properly. Yeah. But this is the thing, I think, because the buying company can walk away at any time, the selling company sort of can't. You tend to think it would be the buyer that would walk away, and I guess that probably happens. But yeah, Bob warned me that it's the selling company. If you just don't have it together, if you haven't figured certain things out, and you stall because you haven't made that decision, that's the stuff that kills the deal.
Fascinating. So we'll wrap up these two questions into one. But basically, the gist is what's next, and how do you feel as a co-founder about the whole journey? What's next? And well, are you doing more insights on a speaking circuit soon?
Yeah,
coming to a Women's Day near you.
Yeah. I mean, I do love sharing my opinions about this. It's so. I mean, I'm full time at Wade, and we teach founders and investors how to think about these things, and largely the businesses that are scaling and exiting, but also businesses that are trying to innovate, so established existing businesses. What I feel quite frustrated about generally is that why did I have to leave property development to do innovation somewhere else? And so that's always bothered me. If the tech world has done a really great job of teaching people to want to come and be founders in tech land, and that's great, it worked great for me. But if all the great people leave the other industries are going to rapidly become rubbish, and all the innovation is going to happen somewhere else. So I'm really interested, and that's a lot of what we do with Wade is helping people innovate in the jobs that they're in and helping those companies. And frankly, generative AI is the catalyst. It's hard to find an industry at the moment that isn't thinking either existentially worried about the disruption 100%. Or excited about the opportunity, and now thinking, how do we adapt the way that we work?
Yeah. I think I've definitely noticed that a lot talking to and existing in startup land, is that people in startups, they sort of all have the same brain, and they're paying attention to the same stuff. Look at the new Claude thing, or the new, or the new Notion thing, or all this new stuff. But then when I speak to some of my corporate friends, they're it's just much more just the actual the work itself, and most of the time Copilot because they have Microsoft contracts. Because they have Microsoft contracts, so it's like, okay, good luck to you.
But it's a thing, right? Like, and anyone who's been an entrepreneur knows that once you've seen that way of working, you're actually ruined. You can't go back, right? It's like once you've seen that way of interrogating assumptions, problem solving, iterative delivery, you can't solve problems the old way anymore. So there's a practice of entrepreneurial thinking that actually could be applied to anyone, and then we can save the world. If the rest of the economy start thinking better.
Startups save the world, you know what they say. We just have a round of questions from Bud here. Firstly, was there an earnout plan?
No earnout. No, all cash.
Okay.
Done, no earnout.
Excellent. Have you done any optimizations around the structure to optimize for taxes?
No.
Okay. Okay. Nice and simple.
I guess that means personally, for my own personal income from it, and a little bit myself. I owed myself a lot of super, so I'm paying a lot of my super back.
Okay.
But yeah, we didn't do anything specific around that.
Yeah, okay. Is there anything that you think that you should have done that you have not done to maximize the value of the exit?
I should have optimized my taxes.
No,
what should I? Yeah, that's a good question. Anything I think? No, I don't think about that. I mean, maybe because I just don't care that much about the money. I care a lot more about the IP and it living on. Like, the money is the money.
Yeah.
But I wasn't doing it for that in the first place. And yes, I have, I'm in a much better position now than I was, but I spent nearly 10 years of my life building tech that I think needed to live in the world, so that if I wake up at 2 a.m. worrying about something, it's worrying about, do they really understand they could also use this capability in that way? Have they thought about that? That's what I worry about, not did I pay too much tax on it. Maybe I'm an idiot for that, or just a tragic founder.
Yeah, that's what I mean about, like, people ask me quite often, like, should I be a founder? I'm like, what are you, nuts? I mean, you can if you would like to. I mean, I won't stop you, but like, it's like, ooh, it's just like, should you? I mean, if you need me to tell you, you should. That's
a different session. You can get me back for that session if you want. We'll have this conversation.
It's a whole therapy thing. Like, I don't know. Like, do you like pain? Are you a masochist? Like,
yes, I mean,
just dive into but it's so fascinating because I think sometimes, like, so many early stage founders that I do speak to and that come through the clubhouse, they get affected by thinking about the money and the finances of the long term, right? But I think ultimately it really makes me think, like, if you spend 8 years building anything, you're gonna definitely have some level of attachment to the actual product itself. Right?
This is it. People say, "Oh, how did you feel selling your baby?" And it's like, look, I got kids. You're not allowed to sell them. Turns out, so it's not my baby. Stop thinking it's not my baby. Right? The part of the business I mourn is the 30 people I had to let go. You know what I mean? Like, when that had happened, we're like, great, we're at the really interesting. I don't mean great, they're gone. I mean, that bit was really hard. Giving up the office, this is now just moving this asset into a shape that it can be sold to the best acquirer for the best amount of money. And once we're in that phase, that's super interesting to do that. But it's not my baby. I don't need an attachment. But also, if anyone has been doing something for that long and investing their whole life into it for that long, and they get to the end and they don't care about that IP and how it gets interpreted, I mean, you must be a psychopath.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's most of the questions. I just have one very last one from Sia.
That's a good question.
It's a great question to end on. Great question to end on. And I mean, it's only hypotheticals, but if you built Neighbourlytics in 2026, how would things be different given the AI acceleration of coding, etc.?
I love this question. I go to sleep thinking about this question. I wake up thinking about this question. I think about this question all the time. I feel like Stephen Bradbury, that we sold the business at exactly the right time, because these days I wouldn't even build out a digital, like a visualization interface. Like, a lot of our product effort went into all the 12 product lines were just on how do we sleeve the data with the right type of insights for the person as they need them. And we spent a lot of time and energy trying to figure out what that looks like. These days, you just slap a chat on it, right? You know what I mean? Yeah. And there's almost like no product. Right? And let the user configure their own thing on the thing, right? So the whole, what is the product? How do we make money out of this would be vastly, vastly different. But the second part of it that I really worry about for founders now is that I learned a really, really valuable like product tactic discipline because I couldn't build anything I wanted. Right. And me and my co-founder were 1,000 ideas a minute kind of co-founder. And the only reason we were able to get to anything of value is because we had the most incredible CCO and team, but because they would help us say, okay, well, because we can't build everything, we have to start with one thing, prove that, and then iteratively deliver. And we were on at some points, even a weekly shipping cycle. We were fast throughputing, but we were really testing and validating one thing at a time. And now I could just build a whole thing on the weekend with my own instructions, but I wouldn't be learning. And so that I think I'd be a terrible founder today. Yeah. But I was a great founder, to be clear, originally.
You should have seen me back in the day. All right. I think that's all the time we have today. A big thank you for Jess once again for coming in.
My pleasure.
Just a last few housekeeping things. This is our YouTube channel, so if you do want to jump on that and subscribe, we have a lot more content coming out, Founder Day content coming soon. This whole session will be recorded and put onto that session as well. And then just finally, we have another event coming up next week. It's the first time we're doing this. Maybe as I'm putting this through, Jess, can you speak to what's the value of having a co-founder? Like how important is it to actually have a co-founder?
Well, having someone that you can brainstorm with, like there's no other relationship like it, because even with your senior staff or your board, they have to wear different hats, whereas a co-founder is your sort of your creative team to think through, what if we did this? What if we did that? What if we did this? When you don't have one, you have to then do that with the team or do that with your board, and they're not necessarily safe spaces to spitball. Agreed. And so some of the most valuable time in the whole business was me and my co-founder in front of the whiteboard, just jamming on, I heard this thing, this is what I'm thinking, what do you reckon?
Yeah. Well, on that note, our next event, Co-Founder Connect, is coming up next Wednesday. The list is technically already, fully booked, but there is a waiting list, and I will be letting in a few more founders sporadically. So if you want to find your co-founder and make these jamming sessions with the whiteboard come to life.
Have you got whiteboards at the sessions?
We do have whiteboards. Oh, we should.
Everyone
we should
gets
actually
a pen.
have whiteboards. Yeah. We should have whiteboards at the session. Feel free to come around to that. But thank you very much, everyone. Catch us in 2 weeks' time for the next one. It's going to be VC Deck Breakdown once again. Okay. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.